darkness, thick dark, eternal dark, the sounds of moans, of souls trapped in swirling torments. Creatures of the night dwell here in this cold realm, creatures who have never seen a living soul, creatures who feed off the sad memories of those who once had life. This is a world of forever night. This is the underworld. And then there's a sound out of the darkness, the sound of soft feet echoing on cold stone, stone that no mortal has ever touched. And a man appears, a vision, a living man crowned in a laurel wreath, a conqueror in this empire of the dead, his hands gripping a lyre, and as he begins to play, as the beautiful strings rise, we see a brilliant light. Orpheus in Hades was painted by Pierre-Marcel Béraneau for the Rose+Croix Salon, held in Paris in 1897. What do we see? We see Orpheus, the poet and bard of Greek myth, descending into the underworld. Orpheus is nude but for a cloth, moving down into Hades and Persephone's realm, the light shining out of him. He is the only living creature here. He wears a crown on his head, a laurel wreath, which is the symbol of divine favour. He holds a lyre, which he plays, and as he plucks the strings, the beautiful sounds bring light to this world of death. You see all around him evil, dark creatures. A grotesque lizard creature looming out of the darkness, poised to feast on limbs. There are things here that look like they cling to moss-sodden rock and never see the light. All mixed up with the poor souls of the underworld that look like thick foliage, knotted and fighting over each other, desperately struggling to break free. In the bottom left of the picture, there seems to be a Christ-like figure, covered in blood and smothered in thorns, resting his head against another in pain and anguish. Orpheus is poised as if he has just begun to play his lyre and break through the darkness of the underworld. The contrast between the light of Orpheus and the dark textures of the creatures expresses the two opposing poles of this painting, life and death. The whole scene unfolds like a dream that's battling a nightmare. There are symbols in this painting that go deeper than myth that most people would skip. But first, the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. In some tellings, Orpheus was the son of Apollo, who gave the bard his first lyre, and the boy was so gifted a musician that he was able to charm the rocks and the trees with his music. And after adventures with the Argonauts, Orpheus returned to his home and married the nymph Eurydice. But their love was doomed when Eurydice, running through the forest one day, was bitten and killed by a snake. Wild with anguish, completely overcome with torment, Orpheus makes a decision to descend into the underworld and rescue Eurydice and bring her back to the land of the living. The Greeks had a word for this, katabasis, to descend into the underworld, to go from the land of the living to the land of the dead. After journeying down, Orpheus meets Hades and charms him with his sad tale and his song, which is retold by the poet Ovid. I beg you, by these fearful places, by this immense abyss and the silence of your vast realms, reverse Eurydice's swift death. I ask this benefit as a gift, but if the fates refuse my wife this kindness, I'm determined not to return, and you can delight in both our deaths. Moved, Hades grants him this wish to take her back up, but on one condition. Till he returns to the land of the living, he cannot look back. And so they climbed, and they climbed, up and up in silence, husband and wife together. Then, nearing the entrance, back to the earth, the sun begins to break through the clouds. It's a sign they're almost there. Excitedly, Orpheus turns back to his love, only for her to disappear forever. Why did he turn back? What possessed him to? Was it doubt? Was it love? Or just the doomed actions of a mortal man? It's Paris, 1897, the world capital of the most advanced art and ideas on the planet. The last of 6 wild exhibitions closes its doors to a hungry public and an eager press. The exhibition, the Salon of the Rose+Croix movement, founded by one eccentric and charismatic man, Joseph Péladan. Péladan referred to himself as the high priest of the mystic order of the Rose+Croix. This man of singular vision, pictured here, was a pivotal figure in the symbolist movement in fin de siècle Paris. Péladan's sect took its name from the 17th century Rosicrucian order, a secret brotherhood of the Rose and Cross, hence the name, a hermeticist, Gnostic, occult movement that held that knowledge, like alchemy, passed down from ancient times from brother to brother, members of this secret order. At the time this artistic movement arose, France was still reeling after losing the Franco-Prussian War of 1871, and this was coupled with a rapidly industrializing society. At this time of change, French artists and intellectuals were drawn to France's ancient and medieval past, to spiritualism and seances, to try to recapture myth in a rational, scientific age. The Rose+Croix movement was free when it came to style, but strict on form. At the Salon exhibitions, there was no realism, no landscapes, and no still lifes allowed, and the art must be in the service of the divine. They expressed this in their poster for the Salon, which, as you can see here, shows the severed head of the artist-writer Émile Zola, who was the champion of naturalism, and one of the painter Béranger. He had studied at the Beaux-Arts under Gustave Moreau, and had been a classmate of Matisse, and Moreau encouraged him to submit his work to the Salon, which would be the last Salon of the movement. And for its swan song, he submits a painting about a man descending into death. Now we see this painting differently. Orpheus's lyre isn't simply an instrument, it's a symbol that art has the power to move even the fates. And with this force, he's able to battle and win, if only temporarily, against the forces of death itself. His musical instrument is his weapon. The laurel crown on his head shows that he has divine favour. He's been crowned like a god, a symbol of ultimate ambition and supreme excellence. He's a champion, the only living being in the lands of the dead. There's a golden light coming off of Orpheus's nude, vulnerable form, showing he's stripped of everything, every protection, showing all he has left is his spirit of pure love and artistic defiance. The Christ figure with the thorns is explicit Rosicrucian symbolism. Christ, the cross, symbolizes earthly suffering and the destiny of men doomed to mortality. The rose is the soul awaiting rebirth. Here, the Christ-like figure represents the human condition itself, suffering, waiting for transcendence. And the light coming off of him is a golden light, and gold is the symbol of alchemy. Alchemy, turning lead into gold, is also the alchemy of the artist, and Orpheus is the spirit of that artist, a man who is able, through artifice, to trigger real change in the world with mere words and song. The central question the painting asks is this: can the artist be like Orpheus, like Christ, and resurrect the dead? And is that resurrection just fleeting? In 1819, while he lay dying in Rome, the poet John Keats wrote this: "Darkling I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath." The Rose+Croix order believed that art was nothing if it wasn't able to transcend and transform, to cross between the world of the living and the world beyond. And with the Orpheus myth, they almost get there. But the myth ends in tragedy. Orpheus turns out of hubris, Eurydice disappears back to the underworld, and he never sees her again. So Orpheus, with his arts, his gifts, is able to bring her back to the threshold, but his own human failings stop him from getting his wish. This painting is frozen in the moment just before the charms of art work on the fates and the furies and Hades himself. Béraneaux's painting about life and death was painted for a movement that was about to die and a century that was about to end. It's about the ability of the artist to perform alchemy in the face of devastating odds. The poet Rilke captured this. Be forever dead in Eurydice and climb back singing. Climb praising as you return to connection. Here among the disappearing in the realm of the transient, be a ringing glass that shatters as it rings. Thanks for watching my video. I'm J. Max Strausler and this is Based Art History. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Appreciate all of your support. I'm on X and Instagram where I post art history daily. Please give me a follow there. Until next time.